Hey guys, what's going on? Long Ash Podcast here. As you know, that is not Nick.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God you know I'm not Nick.
Nick is gallivanting somewhere in Florida. So I decided, we talked about it. This was Nick's suggestion. I thought it was great. We were going to bring in one of our coworkers. Uh, please meet Andy DeAngelo. Andy, do you want to kind of tell the audience what your official title is here?
So I guess my official title is like the lead merchandiser. So that kind of entails not only like the site merchandising as far as the homepage goes, it's also email merchandising and scheduling in that aspect. But probably what takes up the most amount of my time is like the promotion aspect.
The deals for
Like the catalog
catalog
deals,
deals.
the e-commerce deals, the web deals, the targeted deals, the JR Plus deals.
And you curate all them on your own,
Yeah,
or yeah.
yeah, they're all curated every month. Every single one of them is different.
What so? Because when we're on here, we talk about a lot of different aspects of the business.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm learning more and more. What goes into that for you? Are you noticing certain? Obviously, I'm sure there's certain people within the company like, hey, we got to put this specific cigar in this deal, or we just have to kind of focus on a certain brand. But are you paying attention to other trends within the industry and on other websites?
I
Because I do
mean,
feel like you're very active with that. Like
yeah, I
every
mean,
morning you're bringing something up like that. So I'm just wondering
yeah.
if that's always just been like just your process of kind of doing
So,
that.
I mean, I would be wrong if I didn't keep an eye on the competition.
Yeah.
With all the other big guys, I kind of want to know what they're doing, just to know what's going on in the industry. As far as the promotions that I program, they're all based off of results.
Okay.
So
From
if I,
previous year or from previous months.
previous year, previous week,
Okay.
previous lifetime,
Gotcha. All right.
it's I mean it's kind of an accumulation over a bunch of time of figuring out what works, what doesn't. And not everything is just a straight revenue generator. I do things that are revenue generators, but some of it is like, like I'm a huge like foundation fan, so if you're lucky to get some of our, foundation promotions, which don't go out to everybody, they're normally really good. And, it's not like we're bringing home, tons of bank on foundation, but, I love the guys. The cigars are great.
Yeah.
The people that smoke them, I kind of want to give back to them. So, they don't always, have to either pay full price or they get extra free sticks or stuff like that.
Nice. No, that was
So,
yeah. I mean, and you've been in the industry for how long? Like
since 2004.
since you and did you start off
So,
as a merchandiser or?
so I started off as a cashier at a liquor store.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's
At like one of our sister companies bars, or was it just
no,
okay?
no. It's a big liquor chain in Houston. I don't know if I can give shout outs,
Yeah,
but
of course. Yeah.
to Specs Liquor in Houston. That's where I started. I started off as a cashier. My previous job, I was working in like automotive repair, and I was like 18 and gung ho and was like, "This is what I want to do with my life." Then I turned 21 and said, "I don't want to do this
Of course,
anymore." And I was going back to college, so I just decided to get a job as a cashier. And one of the other managers, Abel, shout out, Specs, thank you very much, sir. You changed my life. Was like, hey, yeah, at the time I smoked cigarettes. He was like, hey, he smoked cigarettes, talking to the manager. What if we gave him the humidor? There's nobody in the humidor. And then the manager was like, I want him to go to the deli department so he could do cheese. And Abel was like, no. Like, let's put him in cigars, see what happens.
So yeah, this store seemed like it had it sold cigars, cigarettes. It did have a kitchen
it's
too,
a
or
it's a liquor chain. in
liquor chain.
Houston.
Okay, so it just had a
So
bunch of liquor
yeah,
chains. I've noticed recently they do have like a small humidor, which I didn't.
yeah, yeah.
I never thought of like, oh, that's another way of selling cigars.
Yeah, so Specs in Houston, they're now massive. I started when there were just 20 stores, but they most all the locations carry a good liquor selection, a great wine selection, like finer meats and cheeses and crackers and stuff, and then a humidor. So when I got the humidor, it was before the holidays started and everything, and it looked like total shit. There's my first curse word. Looked like total shit.
Should we do a count?
That was 2. So, Abel, shout out to Abel, was like, hey, fix it up. And so I did. I went in there. I have a real strong kind of organizational skills as far as the way, not every aspect of my life, but my work aspects are highly organized.
When you said it looked like shit, was it just like certain brands weren't near each other? Was it just unorganized?
There were loose sticks on the floor. There was this is how old it was. There were boxes of Te Amo over here and boxes of Te Amo over there.
Wow,
and Play Bravas. And it just looked terrible. And so, I went and just kind of reorganized it, made it look nice. I'd never been in another humidor, so I don't know what looks nice.
What was supposed to look,
and then in January, after the holidays were done, the director of the tobacco portion of the business was visiting the stores, came across my store, said it looked the best in the chain. Shout out Ryan Holder.
Nice. A lot of shout outs.
And said, hey, we want to reward you. We're going to go down to Honduras, go visit Rocky Patel. This was like right as the Edge came out. The Edge Corojo and Maduro came out. The Edge Light was like launching at like IPCPR that year. I got to go down and have a grand old time with Rocky when I was like 21.
Was it just you, or was it some other members from the liquor chain that managed the cigar?
It was me and my immediate, well, not my later immediate supervisor, Glenn. Shout out, Glenn.
I need to start doing more shout outs.
Shout outs, right? Got to get the viewership up.
Exactly.
And we went down there. That was the first time I'd ever been out of the country. This was Honduras in 2004, it was really not a great place then. It was a big culture shock. Really kind of opened my eyes up into, different, how people spend their lives in different parts of the world, and, just kind of gives me a new appreciation for everything I got here.
That's pretty cool. You went at such a young age. I feel like you just said, you're 21 or 22. You've been living in you grew up in Texas. You were living there, and to go to a different part of the country, or the world. The world.
Yeah.
And you just have a deeper appreciation for things. I've never been outside the country. I've been all over the United States.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I went to Bermuda in October on a cruise. I'll chalk that up. But my one big goal is to bring, to be able to provide like experiences for my children to go outside the country at an early age. Because I do that's one thing my grandmother said, before you really get too old and settle down, travel the world, because you will be, your world is just, and I agree, my world is not just New Jersey. Your world's just not, you're not just Texas, right? You're going everywhere. And even within the United States, there's really cool aspects of it that you're like, wow, this is vastly different from where I live. So, and have you been to Honduras? You've been to Honduras since, right? A handful of times. You guys went in March. Was that Honduras in March? Right? March. Yeah.
So just to circle back.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's actually really funny, and I didn't realize how much I like this. But the first time I went to Honduras back in 2004, especially in Texas, we all took Spanish class, and he took it for years on end, right?
Yeah.
And I took it in high school, which isn't too far before I turned 21. We went to a grocery store in the middle of Tegucigalpa, and Rocky's like, oh, we need to stock up for the trip. And I was like, I got to use the bathroom. They said, all right, go find it. I don't know if you've ever been in a foreign country where you kind of learned the language, and you have to go to somebody and say, "Donde está el baño?" And then they speak to you in real Spanish. And you don't understand what they're saying. And so I noticed the guy pointed that direction. So I went that direction, went through a door, asked the next person, "Donde está el baño?" And he pointed another direction, and I went over there through another door, and donde está el baño? And then finally a guy pointed me upstairs, and I finally found the bathroom. But that was like, actually having to go to a place where you don't really speak the language, maybe you know enough to like kind of know something, is something that like it really humbles you.
Yeah.
Because I've traveled to several other countries, and it's like when you get to a place and nobody speaks the same language as you, it's like you're on your own. You got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that happen several times in my life where it's like, you barely speak any of the language, and like you got to order a sandwich at a place and they can't understand you.
Yeah. No, that you, like you said, that's a very humbling experience, and it really shows you how I guess like I said before, like how small maybe your world might be, right?
I took my wife. We went to Croatia on our honeymoon, and I'm like, oh, cool. She's gonna deal with this whole like you don't speak Croatian type thing, right? And everybody in Croatia spoke English, and I was like, we're going to some place that doesn't speak English next time, because you got to figure this out.
I've heard Croatia's beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I heard
it's gorgeous.
The architecture and all the museums.
The architecture, the people are amazing too. The whole Yugoslavian war that went on is pretty wild. And it's something that I wasn't really thinking about until I got there. And
was it, when did you go?
2021.
Okay.
It was like right as COVID was opening up.
Yeah.
So there's barely anybody in the streets.
Nice.
But dude, it's a trip. Like when you go to like Europe and other places, I was in Spain, in Barcelona, and I'm like running around the city with them. We're going out and partying and stuff. And there's a wall with a bunch of bullet holes on it. And I made the joke. I said, oh, is this where Franco killed everybody? And they turned around. They're like, yeah. And I was like, oh. Because here you don't realize that sort of stuff. But over there, that it was less than a century ago.
Yeah.
The Yugoslavian war was what, like 30, 40 years ago?
Yeah, like, was it midnight? Why do I feel like it was like 97, 98?
It was 90s.
90s, yeah. So, like, are there still, when you guys went there, were there still, I guess, because I have a story through my grandmother about kind of the same thing where my grandfather was stationed in Germany in the late 50s because he was teaching English to German students and teaching over at the U.S. bases, and they just got married at 22, and she decided that she didn't want to wait for him to come home, so she went out there at 22, and she said the effects of from Hitler's reign and all that, like churches were not rebuilt, like things were still extremely damaged, and it was 9 years or so after.
Yeah.
So like, did you see anything like that when you went to Yugoslavia, or like, were there any landmarks that like?
Well, in Dubrovnik was interesting. Dubrovnik is, if you ever seen Game of Thrones, it's where King's Landing is. It's based off that.
Okay.
And it's a gorgeous, picturesque city. But what's weird is when you get to the city, it's a fully walled in city. The ancient walls are still there. But on, I don't even know, west side of it, there's a big kind of mountain hill that goes up, and it probably goes up 200 feet or something like that. It's pretty tall, right? And as we're walking through Dubrovnik on one of the streets that is next to the mountain, I started noticing there's bullet holes on the building next to like the I guess the alleys that lead into the town.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at first, but it's the people on the mountain, when they see people pop their heads out, that's where they'd shoot. So anytime somebody tried to cross right there during the war, there are people up on the mountain.
Yep. Sniping them.
It's wild. It's wild. And it's Croatia, and I think it's like Serbia, Herzegovina, or whatever it is. And it's like, dude, like they're the same Slavic type of people, but like they just believe in different things, and then they want to kill each other. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I mean, we make that joke now, but look where we are. Yeah. And it's maybe if more people went to countries that had civil wars and war-torn places, maybe the dialogue would be a little bit different in this country.
No, I agree. And Nick says it all the time on here. He's like, there was nothing that made this country felt closer like post 9/11. Those few weeks after 9/11, like everyone felt so close together, So yeah, going back to, I guess, your experience, you went to Honduras with Rocky Patel. Where did your journey like lead you to after that?
So from there, I started kind of working my district in the humidors there. So it was like the west side of Houston. I went to school downtown, so the big downtown location was there. That's where a lot of the warehouse was.
Yeah.
That's where all the cigars were distributed from. So I slowly started, doing hotshot deliveries to the different stores. When people were on vacation or they lost somebody, I'd go, make sure that store's merchandised correctly. And then eventually I moved to the downtown location, which is kind of the headquarters where everybody's at. And at that time is whenever they started expanding a lot. Like I said, when I started, there were about 20 stores. When I left in 2020, there were over 200 stores.
Wow.
Which is wild, to go from a company that had 20 to 200
In
plus
like
stores.
16 years?
And it was probably more like 10.
Wow.
More like 10. And so whenever I was there, I started becoming the kind of, I guess you could say, the project manager for opening new locations.
Nice.
Which was great. So I got to travel a lot, going to all the different cities and opening up the stores. And
within Texas or?
Within Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were traveling all throughout Texas to open these stores. Nice.
Yeah. And then, during that same time frame, we started doing a lot of sales contests. And I was putting together the sales contests and talking to the vendors to get it set up and running the results numbers and all of that. So we started traveling quite a bit with vendors too. So going to the Davidoff in the Dominican, General's Place in the Dominican, Altadis took us to Connecticut to go visit the farms. I think we did like a bunch of Rocky trips,
Nice.
And Rocky, I don't know if you need to go on a Rocky trip. Those guys are a blast.
Are they? Yeah. I've never,
especially Nish. Shout out.
I met Nish, at Tampa Cigar Bash in 2019.
Yeah.
I went to the Tampa Soho store, which I don't know if it's still open anymore or not, which kind of bums me out because it was such a nice location. It was a really nice location. I met him there because he was running an event. He was really cool. Really cool. He was like stoked that like I was there to like, on behalf of JR and all that to film the event and Tampa Cigar Bash. So he was kind of like grateful for that. I was like, oh, that's pretty, that's pretty, because I feel like when people see cameras, they're like, okay, or like, all right. But no, he seemed really cool. But no, I've yet to been on like a, I guess like a vendor trip per se. I've gone to events for, work here. I've been up to Connecticut a few times just on our own accord. Like, hey, Nick Melillo, like, want to come up and like, look at your new farm or do an interview with you. And he's totally down. But no, I haven't been to a tobacco field yet outside the States. So, those, every time you guys talk about them, they just seem like they're like, you guys come back with more of an appreciation of like cigar, like just the act of the cigar, making the cigar, all that.
Yeah. I mean, the trips are they're a lot of fun, some of them are very well structured. Some of them not so.
Yeah.
They're still the same amount of fun.
Yeah.
Some of the things that really get me are like the processing of the tobacco. The fields are really nice, but as they say, you see one field, you've kind of seen all the fields.
Yeah.
The caveat to that would be shade grown. Every time you walk into a shade grown field, it's always stunning. 10-foot tall plants and everything's, in cheesecloth and stuff. But the factories and the processing is like, to me, that's one of the most interesting aspects. Because every factory does it a little bit differently. And
they've been doing it for like 50 50 plus years too.
They've been doing it for God knows how long.
And you don't break it, don't, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So it's kind of the same, you know, like,
I mean, there was some ancient person in the Americas who took all their tobacco plants that dried out and for whatever reason put them in a big pile.
Yep.
And then went, oh man, this pile's warm. I should probably rotate it around, and then rotated it. And then for whatever reason decided to smoke it and was like, hey, this is better than just drying it and smoking it. Like, so then there's that whole process that goes along.
Curing barns fascinate me.
Curing barns are,
You know, I went to the Drew Estate barn smoker in Connecticut, and I was fortunate enough to film like all these different process, you know, with Pedro Gomez, Willie Herrera, and then I got to meet and interview Jonathan Drew. And him talking about the process while people are up there hanging the leaves in the you know, certain position, you know, where there's more light here versus there. And I say it all the time. I'm sure, you know, if we have reoccurring listeners, I've said it 1,000 times. The science behind it is something I've still yet to really like grasp. Right, the science of growing the tobacco once it's left the field, and even when it's on, like in the field too. Right, I think a lot of cigar smokers don't ever really think about that when they're smoking.
Well, so, I mean, that brings up an interesting point because, you know, as far as crops and agriculture, we understand how it works. There's been a ton of scientific research in it. We understand like what needs nitrogen, what needs potassium. You know, you're missing micro minerals here, manganese or whatever. There's a lot of research that's been done into that. But like the fundamental of like the process of fermentation, I get that it's supposed to convert, you know, what is it, like ammonia?
Yeah.
It's supposed to remove ammonia and convert things to sugars and this and that. But I don't think anybody in the industry has really done scientific research.
You don't think so?
No. I mean, all you're doing, the leaves are decomposing. You're just controlling that decomposition.
Okay.
And I get that things change in it, but how many people have like, you know, how long do you ferment something? You know, do you do it until it stops getting warm? You know, do you pull it early? Because there are people that don't fully ferment, pull it early so it adds more spice and kick to it. You know, as far as those preference. Shades, right? Yeah. There's not somebody in there in the fermentation pile going, okay, here, taking a plug out of a leaf and go and test this to make sure this percentage of, you know, ammonia is gone and this percentage of sugars have converted. There's still like that sort of art to it.
Yeah.
Which is what makes all the factories a little bit different, you know.
And all the cigars.
And all the cigars. Different,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think why...
You know, if we had solid science into this stuff, it'd probably be a lot more boring.
Probably. I think when I say there's more science in it, I guess maybe, I don't know if science would be the correct word, but I guess like, but it's also, it could be the people, team members of these specific factories or whatever, just like really dictating like where to grow the perfect tobacco plant and like, you know, the temperature. I know more South America and whatnot. But like, you know, when, like who discovered like, or who thought of this process of growing it on like a side of a volcano because I guess the soil is richer? How's that going to really differentiate from growing it just on a not on the side of a volcano? You know, I think that, I don't know if that would be, you would put that under science, but there's people out there doing the research and being like, oh, this may be, I don't know, a different way, unless it's the history of agriculture, right? Yeah.
It's like you have this giant mountain, and when it rains, all the micronutrients from the mountain wash down there, you know. And when you look at like, you know, different areas of the world where crops, you know, yield good, normally you find some sort of natural, fertilizer block. That's the wrong word. Fertilizer block, whatever. You find some like naturally occurring micro grow spikes. Yeah. For lack of a better term. But it's, you know, it's the same, as like wine, when you grow in Champagne, because it's a very chalky,
Yeah.
soil, that chalk, the minerals in that chalk are what helps Champagne give it the taste. The same with the different growing areas. It's just over here we have a lot of volcanoes, and volcanoes have great micronutrients.
Yeah. No, I think that's where
But
my mindset kind of goes of like, just like I said, like, instead of saying science, maybe the homework behind it. It fascinates me, really, because I think when I first started here, I never really understood like how much these manufacturers, these factories are really like, man, giving it their 110% to like just produce some of these great cigars. The whole 300 hands thing always like baffles me. Like how many people are in a factory really like, making the cigar boxes, like things of that. Like it's just.
Oh, when you see them sorting leaves by color.
Yeah.
And then you see them sort the leaves by size and texture, that becomes bonkers.
Yeah.
You took all the dry leaves, you piled them up, you let it get warm. And then you're going to take it somewhere, and then you're going to have 80 people sort it by size. And then 80 people sort it by color and texture, whatnot. And then to make it even crazier is you're going to take all those different bundled assortments and you're going to wrap it up in a bale, and hopefully some sort of barcode or inventory system goes onto it. Maybe. And then that gets stored in a warehouse for aging. And then, then you're going to get your samples out. And then somebody's got to go to the warehouse, know where all this stuff is.
Yeah.
Find it, bring it to you so you can experiment with it. And then, the other flip side of it is okay, well, I'm going to make 200,000 cigars of this. Oh, well, we only have inventory for 100. Okay, cool. I'll take the 100. What about next year? And then you got to do the whole process again for next year's crop. And then it's not, like I said, it's not a science. So next year you're going to have to reblend the cigar, which is the dirty secret in the industry. People reblend cigars all the time. It's just the amount of work that goes into it to smoke a cigar year after year and think that it's the same cigar is crazy. It's crazy. And then you pay $10 for it, which is like, oh, you pay $10. There's a ton of work that goes into it. The organizational aspect of it is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really something that I like. I keep saying I don't think the average cigar smoker really, until they do the research or hear someone like you breaking it down beautifully.
kind of
say, well, but it's something I think people, if you keep smoking, that they really want to hear. We're enjoying the Crown Head CHC Serie E. Came out a few years ago. How's yours smoking?
Great. This is one of my favorite cigars.
Yeah.
It's also one of the cigars that I actually bought a box of, because I normally don't buy boxes or anything, but a few boxes. Yeah.
Nice. Did you buy a lot of boxes during COVID or?
No.
No.
I've been one of those few fortunate ones that has been in the industry long enough. You just accumulate.
Yep. Here. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I haven't. I can't. I think the last box I bought was the Alec Bradley Wagyu 50th, because, like you said, I've been very fortunate of early on people being like, "Oh, you're new," or if we have manufacturers or anyone come up here, they are always giving you 2 or 3 and enjoying, and you take your time with them. So when did you land at JR? And how has that kind of, I guess, been different in terms of what you were doing in the past? Like I said, I could tell right off the bat, like Steve and I, just to peel the curtain back a little bit, we just joined your guys' team a few months ago. And I think for me, it's been beneficial to kind of hear you guys just every day talk about your job, because I think I just get, and sitting in meetings with vendors and bringing the aspect of like the creative video side to it, because all you guys are chiming in too. And it's not a bad thing, because I think you guys just know like, oh, this specific line would do well, for a video, for this or for that. Like, I think kind of heavily relying on you guys has been helpful for us. So how was it to, go from, I guess managing, liquor stores and basically being like the district manager to coming on like now like the more, I would say, more business side of the industry.
So I did kind of like the retail merchandising. I also started buying probably like 2012. I always ordered for the humidors I was at, but then I started buying for the company. And
what goes in, if you, as much as you can explain, what goes into that part of the job, the buying part versus, the buying part for the district.
I was buying for the company.
Sorry. Okay. The company.
So
yeah.
It's a purchasing job.
Okay.
So you just kind of look at the average units that go out, how much you have on hand, how long does it take to come in, and then you just kind of forecast your needs there. So it's not that aspect isn't really complex,
Is it very analytical? I'm assuming it's very analytical.
No,
or not? No, really?
No,
okay.
dude.
All right.
No, I literally printed out our entire portfolio on a piece of paper with boxes, and I'd say, how many do I have left? What's the difference? Order more.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's the same thing we do here. This is just a purchasing job. It wasn't really like procurement. Procurement's a little bit different when you have to go out and start sourcing materials.
Yeah.
But I did that, and then I kind of ended up overseeing kind of the operations for the company. So I still did purchasing, but I made sure all the, I was over a staff that, made sure transfers got to the stores, special orders, TPA, IPCPR, PCA now, buys, doing all that and kind of just managing the day to day. And then COVID hit. And all throughout my time at Specs, I went to college and then I started teaching at the college. So I taught at the college for like 5 or 6 years. COVID hit, everybody's leaving their jobs. I'd been there for 16 years. My boss above me, he was only maybe like 10 years older than I am. And he had been there kind of since the beginning. And, I kind of had a choice at my hands there. I know that he's going to stay a while. Shout out to Ryan. Love you. I knew that he was going to stay there a while. And, I just had a decision in my life do I want to sit at this kind of operations positions job for the next, 20 years, doing kind of the same thing, or do I want to try something new? And COVID had happened, everybody's leaving their jobs. And I said, you know what, it's time I do something new. I've been there for 16 years.
Yeah.
I have a side gig teaching. I was promised 2 classes in the spring. So I was like, great. So I left my job in October. February, I was supposed to start teaching, and then I was just going to play it by ear from there. 3 days before school started, I got a message from the dean of the college who said, I'm sorry, we had to give your classes to tenured professors. So I woke up unemployed. And I needed a job because I didn't have that much money. And I just happened to go on to Craigslist of all places and see that CDM was hiring. So I, sent in a resume, immediately got a call back. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Kenny, for saving me. And at the time, I didn't quite connect it, but Brad was the CEO. Yeah. And I had done, things in conjunction with Brad at my time at Specs. Got hired there. That was my first real cigar shop, because working at a liquor store, selling people cigars and then they leave is one thing. You sell somebody a cigar and they're talking to you for 2 hours. Yeah. That's a different thing. Yes. It's a different thing. So it was really good to get that under my belt, because I had a lot of retail experience. In wholesale, we wholesaled to restaurants. And then to get some of the actual, meat and potatoes, humidor, cigar shop type, life. And then a position, Rob Sarkar, I'd known him for quite a long time. We met at PCA. had messaged me. He said, "Hey, we're opening up for a buyer position."
He's from the area, Houston.
Yeah,
right?
he's from Houston.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey, we're opening up for a buyer position." I said, "Cool." I had already applied to JR once before then and got denied. This is a funny story.
I think yes.
Because I applied to JR maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. Had a quick interview, whatever. I didn't get a call back. And then so I work for CDM, and I'm like, oh, this is a great in. So, hey, they were hiring for a buyer, applied, didn't work. Like, they canceled the position. Like a month later, they put out another thing and said that they were hiring. And I saw the email and I replied back, and immediately my email got bounced back as undeliverable. And I looked at the email address, and somebody left off 3 letters at the end.
Oh, no.
INC.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I said, Beth, thank you for leaving that off, because I'm going to be the only person that actually applies to this, because I know your email address.
Yeah.
So I added the last 3 letters, applied, position closed.
That's great. That's
and then
funny.
I think it was like a few months later, I think Rob maybe called me and said, hey, we're hiring. Make sure you put it in. And I said, all right, this is now the 4th time I've applied for this job. Put it in, and went through the interview process, got hired, and then came up here. And that was kind of my first foray into the world of e-commerce, because e-commerce is a total different beast than retail.
Yeah.
In retail, you're looking at your customer.
Mm-hmm.
E-commerce,
There's
you
no
have
face to-
customers.
yeah.
There's no faces. We're trying to do everything we can do to try and figure out who you are, what you like, what you smoke, what your taste preferences are, all the things that you would do in a normal cigar shop. Now you got to do it to almost, a faceless customer, which is, the one part that I really miss is the face-to-face. I miss talking to people.
You're good
I
with
miss
people.
stories.
I mean, we went out in June for the magazine, and you're just good with people. Like I think you have this energy where I feel comfortable talking to you. I think that's the customer. That must be the customer service.
Yeah.
Retail side of you. I worked retail when I was younger, and I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I could ever have that as like a full-time. I don't like, because to me it's like, if you are kind of having like a crappy day, you have to put that aside, right?
Oh, but
because I think people might, depending on what your retail job is, right? If I feel like with cigar shops, and you could tell me if I'm right or wrong. Mm-hmm. When I've walked into them, they've always greeted me. Hey, what's going on? Do you need help looking for anything? And when I know what I'm going to get, and then I go up there, that's when I really start like the conversation with them. I remember I went to a brick and mortar store in Staten Island, and I liked I really enjoyed their selection. But I was like, hey, have you guys ever? I just asked them. I was like, have you ever smoked it? I brought my own, but I brought a few of mine because I was going to be there for hours. I showed him. I brought a Luminosa with me because I just wanted to enjoy that after what I was going to smoke. And they're like, "No, I've never even heard of them. Who's that?" I was like, "Crown Heads." They're like, "I've never heard of them." And it's kind of like baffling to me because I think everyone would know it. But then you start talking to that, like you start really engaging, and then it's a good conversation, because I think when people come into cigar shops, they're either new and they don't know what they want, so they'll go to you, or they know what they want, and they, depending on their mood, they might sit and talk around with you for a few hours. If you're doing like clothing retail, there's people that come in, they know what they want, they're out. And then sometimes, most of the time, especially if you're working in a mall, people are just browsing, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like retail could be definitely tougher in that aspect, where it's like, maybe, I'm not having the best morning, I could just put music in and chill out and relax. But retail is like you're always on, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people not so much.
Yeah,
yeah. When you go to Walgreens at 3 a.m, they are very on their game.
Not so much, but
it's interesting you bring up that point. Whenever I was working at Specs, it's a large chain. Sure, there's dedicated cigar smokers, but most of the people are going in there. They're going in to buy Crown Royal, Jack Daniels, whatnot. They see a humidor, they're like, I want to buy cigars.
Yeah.
So when you get into that world, a lot of the big brands carry the day.
Yes.
Your Monte Cristos, Romeos, Macanudos,
And I'm
yada,
assuming
yada.
most of the time people were coming in being like, I just bought X, Y, and Z. What pairs well? Like, did they always
There's
go
a
to-
lot of that.
A lot of that,
There's
yeah.
a lot of that. But, then again, it's the name recognition in those types of places. We would always have hard times, selling boutique cigars because it just wasn't the clientele.
Yeah.
You go in there and you try selling somebody on, I don't know, what's a boutique these days? Crown Heads.
Yeah, Crown Heads
Right.
Foundation. Yep. Yeah.
If I'm the guy who smokes twice a year, I don't know what a Crown Head is. And so what we noticed is the cigar shops with actual humidor people in there who were cigar smokers, boutiques would do well.
Okay.
The flip side of that is I go to work at CDM and people will smoke whatever I point at. Like, insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
They'll
What are
trust
you
your
smoking?
word.
Yeah, they
Yep.
trust my word because, again, they're going to be there with you for 2 hours.
Yep.
And if it sucks,
They'll let
they
you
have
know.
no problem telling you it sucks. So you better get your recommendation right.
Yeah.
But it is funny, like, we would have things where it's like, I've smoked so many cigars, sometimes I just want to try random stuff. And there was a box of Trinidad Santiago Bellicosos in the
wow.
humidor from God knows how old they were.
Wow. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I said, I'll give it a shot. And I smoked it, and I swear to God, it tasted like salted honey. It was one of the best cigars I ever had in my
Really?
life. And I'm like smoking there, and it's like a Tuesday night. There's nobody coming in or out. And I'm like so enamored with it, which very rarely happens, that a customer walked in and she's like, "What are you smoking?" And I said, "It's Trinidad Santiago." I was like, "It is crazy good." And she's like, "I've never heard of that." And I go, "Try one." And she's just like, "All right." So she went and bought like one for her and one for her husband, I think. They left. The next day she came in. And I had told several other people, and people had bought them too. The next day she came in and was like, "I'm buying all of them." And I said,
Wow.
"No, you're not. You were giving me 2." And she let me have 2. And I cracked open the next box, smoked it. Pretty dang close.
Wow.
Close enough that, I continued the shtick. We ran out. 3 months later, I'm at a different casa, and I see him on there, and I bought one all excited, and it was not the same. Totally not the
I
same
wonder
cigar.
why.
I don't know if I just got like that unicorn box
Yeah.
or whatever. But that's one of the funny things. People at cigar shops will smoke boutiques. They'll smoke whatever you point at. And I feel like e-commerce is kind of that way too, or not that way. I'm sorry. E-commerce is kind of the opposite. It's almost like the big liquor store.
Yeah.
Me, you, Nick, Bobby, Warren, we love boutique cigars. Like, I love them.
Yeah. A lot of the cigars you do recommend me are usually like the boutique smaller brands, and you're like, dude, just give it a shot, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go, and I've noticed too, like working here, like people in my life that smoke, they're like, "What do you recommend?" I was like, "Well, I know your palate and my palate are very different,
Yeah.
but I'll still be like, you know what? I'll tell my father-in-law, like, try a Foundation, right? And then he'll either be like, man, that was stronger, or then he'll love it. Like I got him he tried the knuckle sandwich, and he like was like, that's the best damn cigar I've ever had. I was like, well, yeah, because you're used to smoking, Avantis or like Denoble, like your stuff, that's fine. But he was like, I want a box right now, and he's never bought a box. So there is some pleasure in like recommending that to someone when it's not like your big name brands, right?
Yeah.
But like you're right, like it's not for everybody. So it must be interesting when customers come in and ask you like, what do you recommend? I'm sure there's a list of like questions that you're like, well, what do you usually like to smoke? What like strength and body, flavor, and then I think you're able to dwindle it down because that 1 in a million chance you recommending the Trinidad Santiago, and then her coming back and buying all of it, like that I feel like that's a very rare occurrence too.
Yeah, I mean, so she knew that they don't make it anymore.
Okay.
She knew that this is a once and done. You're
all right.
never going to get these again. but yeah, like I don't. The e-commerce world, it is very much like the liquor store retail chains.
You were saying, yep.
You know, where people are buying big brands and stuff like that, which is why you see big brands promoted. You know, a lot of the boutique manufacturers and other vendors, surprise, surprise, don't want us to discount their products.
Yeah.
Cigar Page does it. Yeah, everybody hates Cigar Page.
Yes.
Well,
because they're already not. They're small. Like I always take things into like I compare it to, I guess, like maybe music or movies. The boutique brands are more like the independent films. That's not gonna like, or smaller, but like they don't want to. This is my assumption. Please correct me if I'm wrong. With boutiques, you don't want them to get discounted heavily because it probably they might not make. Will they make a lot of like return on investment or?
Well, with boutiques, they're like the whole liquor store versus cigar shop, right? Their boutiques business is in the cigar shop.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier to sell people on it. So they don't want us to devalue their brands because they want to support brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a lot of people complain, I see it on Reddit all day long that you should go to Cigar Page for the deals and, screw everybody else, basically, is what they're saying. And we get a lot of flack because we don't discount brands like Tatuaje and My Father and Padron. And it's not, it's not from our sort of viewpoint of our, what us to make money on them. We have a certain margin threshold we need to hit. I don't care how much I discount something. I just have to hit a margin threshold. Mm-hmm. These manufacturers ask us not to. So when you deal with people like Cigar Page that are working outside of this, they're directly doing what the manufacturer does not want you to do. And then in turn, it goes back and hurts all of the little cigar shops.
Yeah. And that's what Nick and I have talked about, how like JR is viewed as the Walmart or the big brother of the cigar industry. And you do get a lot of people, even in like the YouTube comments, essentially, kind of, saying like, oh, you guys are like you guys are kind of the reason that brick and mortars aren't thriving, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, man. When I go on the website or I'm looking through other websites compared to JR's, I think that for certain brands, like we're very fair. When you break it down to the MSRP pricing and how like the trend is now, on average, I would say cigars are like a single cigar on average right now in 2024 is like $12. When I started 5 years ago, it was more like $8.
So here's the whole crux of all of this, and this is why, we get flack, right? Because when you go to your cigar shop around the corner, right? So there's two prices associated to cigars. There's your manufacturer suggested retail, which is basically, what they say, hey, you can sell it for this, up to this, up to this. And then there is the suggested retail price, and that's what you can sell it as low as this. The problem with brick and mortar is they're selling things at MSRP or $2 higher or $3 or $5, or God forbid they get Opus X and they're selling them for $75 a piece. I mean, it goes back to the customer, right? If your brick and mortar shop is selling things for, $2 over MSRP, what are you going to do? We're savvy customers. You're going to go look online. It's not, and the brands that we do discount, brick and mortars can discount it too. They don't want to, obviously,
because they're trying to make
trying to make money.
Yeah.
But and then it goes in when you look at the e-commerce realm, it's we're just more we're flexible. We have I don't want to say less overhead because the overhead at this place is insane. But it's part of the business of what makes e-commerce websites stand out for other e-commerce websites is the promotions, the customer service, the quality of, how has this product been kept? And you just flip that over to the brick and mortar too. What's the quality of service?
Yeah.
How long has it been kept? And pricing. If you're gouging your customers, guess what? That's your own fault.
Mm-hmm. I've seen
if you would like to give back to your customers, like I give back to our customers that buy boutiques, if you're lucky enough to get that email, that doesn't go out to everybody.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to treat it as if it's two whole different parts of the business. And I get it. I get why it looks like that, but it's not. You should be giving back to your customers in some sort of way, whether it's, hey, we're going to give you $30 off this box this week, or, this box next week. It's all about making the customers happy.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very well put, because I have gone to certain brick and mortar stores and I've seen a price of a cigar that I know for a fact, like we sell it for almost $5 cheaper.
Yeah.
And that, you're trying to make your money. And so most of these stores too, I've seen a trend where they'll give you like free water, free coffee, which is, I think sometimes is a nice perk, but man, I don't necessarily think I should be paying $17 for certain brands for one cigar.
Yeah.
Like that's me, but maybe I'm being selfish, because I've been very fortunate to really just be a part of teams where they're, or just be around where they're like, hey, here, try this out. Right. So maybe that's my disconnection here with it as well.
There's also, the perks of a cigar lounge.
Yeah.
As you go, sure, you're paying the suggested retail price and hopefully not $2 above MSRP, is that you're going there for the experience. You're going there to meet people. A lot of times it's BYOB. Even if there's, a cut and light fee, who cares? What are you going to, a couple bucks? You're going to be there for the next 2 or 3 hours hanging out. So it's part of that experience. And we don't get to do that as an e-commerce company. Mm-hmm. And like, I would love to pitch Brad some events. I have ideas for kind of ongoing events, because that's the hardest thing about e-commerce is getting out of the virtual world and getting into the real world.
Yeah, no, that's like you say, e-com is a beast on itself, and it is all trying to make the user experience to an easy one. And I think there are some elements from our like our sites or JR's site that is different than other sites I've seen. And I think that's where you, at the end of the day, to me, like that's where you differentiate yourself from other competitors and companies and all that. So,
yeah, I mean the e-commerce space it's so it's so odd. You ever get on Reddit?
I have.
You ever get on the Cigars subreddit?
Nick says he used to be on there, and it became like a vile place.
Oh my gosh, it is so.
There's sometimes I'm on it, but I also just
like I love it for to see what people are smoking and to talk about cigars. But it's like there's this bit of a weird echo chamber that goes on in Reddit, whether it's. You're smoking Monte Cristos. Those are horrible. I only smoke insert boutique brand that you've never heard of here. And, or saying, very specific. Oh, I only order from specific website. I read a post one time and it was hilarious because it's like JR's going downhill, which if you're ever on Reddit, those things come up every, so often.
Yeah.
Where JR's going downhill. And one of the funny things on it was like, I heard they got a new CEO and he doesn't know what he's doing. Like he's barely been in the industry. And I'm sitting there like,
how do they know that though? Like,
do you know who Brad is?
Yeah.
Like, do you know how like key he is in the overall industry?
Yeah.
Like, I don't, there's,
he's been with Altadis.
Mm-hmm.
He's been with CDM. he's he's with us, and
I think he worked with like Rocky for a while.
yeah, I mean, he's been around for a very long time, but I wonder, like, that sounds like someone. I don't know, if like someone who's worked here, like, or knows of Brad well to even make that claim, because I don't. But
Well, there's like, okay, so
but also, or it could just be someone just talking shit and not knowing what they're talking about. And I feel like that's half the internet, though.
So, well, that's half of this industry is the
Yeah.
problem. Half of this industry is hearsay and folklore and, this and that. I've gotten into this argument several times where people tell me Oliva doesn't make seconds. And I said, no, they don't make seconds, but there are seconds. And they're like, but how do they make enough seconds? And I'm like, do you understand how many cigars Oliva produces?
Yeah.
Like a year?
Do you think? Sorry if this is a stupid question. I feel like I've been asking a lot of them, but do you think most companies, if they wanted to, could make seconds from like all the leftover tobacco that's not even used for certain brands, right? Or certain blends, right? Like you would say, but Oliva specifically, like you said, they have so much left over that it would be a waste of money to trash that shit.
Well, so there's when you get a bad cigar, there's a couple things that you can do. You can break the wrapper off. You can try and re-roll it and make it a first. You can just toss it to the bin and call it a second. Which if you want to think about brand prestige and yada yada, it's diminishing the brand. You're basically giving the customer a $10 cigar for $4. It's the same cigar. It just the coloring might be different. Maybe the draw is a little tight, whatnot. Or you can break it apart, sell it as mass market machine made. So a lot of companies don't want to sell seconds, like straight up seconds.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. They'd rather break it apart and use it as something else. Or, a lot of the boutique people that own their own factory will take off the wrapper and re-roll it.
Okay.
Only boutiques, the big guys,
they just toss
get rid
it out.
of it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like Oliva releases seconds once a year. There's only one buy-in.
Yeah.
I told this guy on the internet this exact same thing. Luckily somebody else chimed in and was on my side.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, if Oliva makes, let's say, let's go on the low side and say 20,000 cigars a day. And 1% of that is, and it's higher than 1%,
of course,
but 1% of that is bundles. What is that? 2,000, that's what? Is that 20?
20, yeah.
No, 200.
200.
So that's 200
so,
cigars a day. It's higher than that, and they make more than that. But I ran the math out for them, and I was like, look, this is how it works. You only buy it once a year. When they're gone, they're gone. And he just constantly said, whatever, you just eat up that marketing. And I'm like, no, I literally made the buy for the Oliva seconds. I talked to the CEO to get the seconds once a year.
Yeah.
And it's I get where Nick's saying. I mean, Reddit, where things just run rampant. You can get it from the people's mouths.
Yeah.
There's podcasts out there that talk to people, but it's so steeped in this like mystery. And it doesn't help that people release cigars and it says unknown blend. You know what that blend is. Just say it.
Yeah.
It's like when Rocky Decade came out. And he's like, oh, there's unknown tobacco in here.
Like, yeah.
You know what the unknown tobacco was?
What?
Came from Pennsylvania.
But why didn't he want to say it?
Yeah, it makes the mystique.
Yeah. The mystique, yeah.
And a lot of people still do that, or they straight up lie about what's in it.
Yeah. Which is terrible.
For whatever reason, Costa Rican and Peruvian tobaccos look down upon. And a lot of cigars that use it don't want to say it.
That's interesting. I don't know why. There are a few cigars I see online that have like Costa Rican binders. I'm like, that's probably very different and something I would want to try. But I don't know.
That's the reason right there. Because, a Costa Rican, I don't know. I've never smoked Costa Rican. I don't know if I want to try that.
No, I would try it.
I would. But if it just says Nicaraguan.
Yeah, I mean, you're more like, okay, I know what I'm getting with a Nicaraguan. But I think when you do see tobacco, different tobaccos in cigars that you aren't accustomed to seeing, I think there's that more like, I wonder how that would be. I would take a gamble on it, but
Well, and nowadays it's great because people are trying different things.
yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
I love seeing it.
which is hilarious. This is another thing I was thinking of this morning. Is like whenever I started, the blend and everything was Corojo and Criollo.
Yeah.
That's it. Like there was Cameroon wrappers.
Mm-hmm.
There's Ecuadorian Connecticut Habano. Doesn't say which Habano, but Habano.
Yeah.
And Corojo and Criollo, and that was about it. You know, besides the Davidoff, the stuff that they use, and that's one of the biggest changes is the variety of tobaccos have gotten much wider.
Yes.
You know, if you guys ever smoked like some of the Warp stuff, Warp is all Criollo and Corojo. Oh, man, I wish I could remember the name of the cigar. It had like their 902 cap on it. Came in cabinets of 50. Dude, I CDM had it that I worked at. It reminded me of like the old school cigars I smoked, like when I started.
Yeah,
and I fell in love with it.
I'm not. It's not coming to me. Shit. Yeah, it's not coming to me. But I think Warped is a good example. They do primarily use Criollo and Corojo tobacco.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what it is, dude. It's just the way I guess maybe Kyle Gels blends it. They don't all taste the same.
No.
You know, like but it is. I think he kind of like he sticks to what he knows, and it works out. But I do enjoy seeing, like different blends from people who I think know like can kind of step out of their like comfort zone, let's say, and try something new because they know maybe their fans are always going to like try it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a really cool aspect of the industry too.
I mean, I don't know if you smoked, it's like Black Label's Killer Bee.
Yeah.
Dude, talk about a different cigar.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
I don't think I've ever like smoked a cigar from Black Label that I wasn't like, wow. Like it like and their catalog may not be as big as other ones, but every cigar I've had from them I've thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I think people should definitely give them a try. I could talk to you for hours. I just know we need to get back to work.
Has it been an hour?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been over an hour.
No, dude. I appreciate you coming on. I learned a lot. I love chatting with you.
I don't think you learned anything. We talk shit all the time.
Yeah, we do. But I love hearing you talk shit specifically. So, but thank you guys for listening once again. Thank you, Andy, for coming on. Guys, please comment, like, and subscribe to our podcasts and our channels on YouTube and Spotify. And thank you again for listening.